another episode of the Andy Audate podcast. I'm Lory Audate, the co-host for the Andy Audate show, and together Andy and we explore topics about business, sales, and personal development. How are you doing, Andy, this week?
I'm phenomenal. I'm glad to be back in the office, getting it done. I spent the last week during doing a leadership training, and in that leadership training, it was really about being held accountable to hit big goals in life and to not play small and to get uncomfortable.
Yes, I definitely can relate to that. I just did my, is it 3 month fitness check in? And happy to say I lost like 2.5 pounds. And I was like, finally, it's been taking so long, at least in the entire journey
Yeah.
of over a year, right? But this actually brings me to today's topics because it's been very present in our lives, business and personal, how we tackle goals. I know that many times we have goals that we do together as a couple, but then we have a lot of individual goals. So let's go into that. This week in our podcast, what are your thoughts on still setting up goals, kind of how they taught us in school, like SMART goals? Let's start with that. What are your thoughts on like SMART goals?
When we look at SMART goals is specific, measurable, like those that, and it's really about basic goals. Let me go ahead and do a little bit of research on the SMART goals on the actual meeting. So it's clear, specific, measurable, something that's achievable, relevant, and time bound. Now, specific is like goals that should be clearly defined. Okay, got that. Measurables, it should be able to be tracked. Okay, understood. Something that's achievable. And I think that's where I've always got stuck on is the idea of a SMART goal being something that's achievable, or some other people may call it attainable. And the question is like, how could you tell me what's achievable or attainable? And usually, what they're doing is they're comparing it to like the average sum of people around you. So, like for example, if you're talking about income, if you're talking about income, they'll say the professors and the coaches will say, oh, well, choose a number that's achievable or choose a number that's attainable. And then how do you determine what's achievable and attainable? You look at people who are average. You look at the average sum. So if you're looking at, for example, income, let me go ahead and search what is the average income in, let's say, in the United States. In the United States, the average income right now is $37,585. That's the average income. So most coaches are going to say, hey, choose a target that is uh, progression compared to where you're at, but then it's also average. So if you're just starting out in your career, they're going to say the average income is 37,000. So you can aim for like 37,000 or maybe a little bit past that and go for like 39,000 or $40,000 in income. And to me, I am completely against like average. I actually wrote a book about it called No More Average, right? I wrote that book many years ago. And that was the base fundamental understanding is if you want to do anything phenomenal, you got to get away from being average and do something extraordinary.
Yes, definitely. And with I know there's a lot of tactics, right? Like there's a whole trend, I would say, where people say like, "Oh, you got to wake up at 5 a.m. or you got to do this." Like everybody has declared on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok like, "No, this is the way to hit goals." But I definitely wouldn't want to overwhelm people like wake up at 5 a.m., meal prep, do this, do that, grow a team. Like that would be a lot of actionable steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it would definitely serve audience to really bring it down to three things you believe are important for someone to achieve their goals, interconnected, whether it's personal or business. So what would you say number one of those three would be how to and a strategy to reach their goals?
So number one thing is you actually got to do something much more the opposite of SMART goals, which is declare big. That's the number one thing. Declare something that is so uncomfortable, something that is like far from average, something that you can, it's hard to even imagine. Because what that does, it puts you in a position to get creative. When someone says, for example, let's use money, because money is a tool that most people need, majority, if not 99% of the United States population needs. And it's something that is specific. It's something that's measurable that you can measure, and money is a report card of how much value you're giving to the world. That's exactly what it is. It's just a report card. And so if you can declare big, let's use money as an example, that's a representation of the value that you're giving to the world. If you declare small, for example, like, hey, I want to go from, you know, $5,000 to $5,500 in monthly income. So I'm currently making 5,000. I want to go to 5,500. I want to get a 10% increase. You can make that your target, but what actually creates a different being? What creates a different person? What creates a different leader? What creates a different entrepreneur? What creates a different team member? What creates a different husband? What creates a different father is when you declare big. And if you can declare big, so for example, if someone's big who's currently making 5,000, if they can imagine saying, "Hey, I'm gonna make $50,000," and they're committed to it, they get very creative. They get very creative. Commitment breeds creativity. So they get very creative with how they're gonna be that create that result, and but most importantly, what type of person that they get to be. So the 5 a.m. thing, for example, like you mentioned, like, okay, I'm not going to talk about waking up early at 5 a.m., so on and so forth. However, waking up at 5 a.m. or waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that becomes a byproduct of thinking big, because there's so much things you get to do. Now, if you're someone like me, like, okay, I can wake up at 10 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, I'm like here, 10 o'clock in the afternoon.
For you, it's the afternoon because you do
Yeah,
wake up at 4:30 in the morning.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. 10 o'clock in the morning is to me, it does feel like the afternoon. But if I wake up at that time, then I know the amount of things that I get to get done. Like, for example, let's say if I woke up at 10 o'clock, here's what my day would look like, considering that I do a lot of the things that I do today. I would spend the first 2 hours of the morning with Damon, my coach, and we would be at the gym. So that means I wake up at 10. Well, I need to cold plunge, that cold plunge, pray, read the Bible, and stretch and do breath work. So I do this, and that typically takes about an hour or so. Then so that now I'm at 11 a.m. And then from 11 a.m. I spent 2 hours with Damon. We do our stretch, cardio, and we lift weights. That's 2 hours, and then take a shower within that 2 hours. Head over to the office. So now I went from 11 a.m. to now it's 1 p.m. So 11 to 12. So it's 1 p.m. Now I'm at work at 1 p.m. Then I start my day, and I do podcasts and meetings, and that's about 6 hours of work between podcast meetings, client call, coaching, things of that nature. So now it's 7 o'clock at night. So it's
right.
7 o'clock at that point. It's 7 o'clock at night, and then I go home to spend time with you. And so if I'm getting home at 7 o'clock at night, well, the day ends at 7 o'clock. So it takes about 45 minutes to decompress, get to the house. Now it's 8 o'clock. Now I'm gonna start my night with you at 8 o'clock at night. That's not the life that I want to live. Now, and especially if I have kids, right? Especially if I have a family. So to come home at 8 o'clock and to now start the spending time with you, that's not the life that I want to live. I want to live a life where I come out and it's daylight, and the rest of the world is awake, or the
Yeah.
rest of my world is awake. So to accomplish the things I accomplish, I reverse engineer, and I'm like, okay, the math says that I get to wake up at 3:55. My alarm gets to ring at 3:55 in the morning, and then by 4:30, I'm already outside doing my cold plunge and stretching and things of that nature.
Yes, I agree. And you mentioned something very important there, which is the 5 a.m. is a byproduct, right? Like when me and you write goals or we share, hey, I have a new goal. I never say like my goal is to start cooking at 6:30 in the morning. That's not my goal in life. The
Hmm.
goal is that I want to be healthy and energized, not through caffeine, not through supplements and things of that sort. And very similar to what you just shared is if my goal is X, then what does it take to do that? Right. And I think that's where the 5 a.m. people or the 5 a.m. club or the 5 a.m. concept came. It's the goal is not to wake up at 5 a.m. just to be mad that you're waking up at 5 a.m. It's a byproduct of the major goal that you set. So when me and you established a goal, like we want to reach X amount in the business, we only want to work this many hours. We pretty much had to make some tough choices. What does that entail? Oh, well, it ends up being that we start at this time and it ends at this time, and
Yeah.
that's that. So that is an important element. I think by establishing a big goal, let's say someone says, I'm only making 5,000 a month, it's cutting it close on the bills and operation costs. What will it take to hit 20,000? I would bet that their calendar would look a little bit different. Would you agree?
Yeah, if you're currently making 5,000, like you said, and and if they need an extra $1,000, when you declare an extra $1,000, you fail. You'll miss the target most of the time. 9 out of 10 times you'll miss the target. So because you put 5,000, because you're not really understanding how much effort it's gonna actually take to make the extra thousand or the extra $2,000 that you need if you're currently making 5,000, which today in my eyes like it's very small numbers. However, but that's the reality of most of America, right? If the average income is $37,000 in America, that's the reality of it. And but if you're making $37,000, if you can identify the skills, the processes, the mindset of someone making six figures, even if your goal is to make an extra $10,000, you're making $37,000 right now, you want to make an extra 47. If you can identify the skills, the processes, the mindset, the relationships of someone making six figures, your income is going to change regardless if you make six figures or not. Because if you're making $37,000, like I saw when I searched online, what is the average household? What is the median income in the United States of America? It was $37,585 in 2022. That was
Whew.
the average median income. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying, hey, I want to make an extra $10,000 this year, which that is going to be about like $800 and change for per month, an extra.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When someone can identify and say, okay, just an extra 10,000, so that's only $47,000 extra, or $47,000 in total income for the year. It's a small increase. However, if you can, that person can hang out with some six-figure earners, understand what does a six-figure earner do, what does their calendar look like, what does their schedule look like, what does their mindset look like, then they'll be able to identify, okay, I surpassed the 10,000, and that's typically the outcome. They'll surpass the 10,000 that they originally needed because they were hanging around with people who were much more advanced with them than they were. So that's going to
Right.
be number two, is to get around others who are already at the stage that you want to be in. You want to get around other people who are
Right.
at a completely different stage. And if you can spend some time, if you're currently a five-figure earner and you spend some time with a six-figure earner, then you're going to create different results. Same thing, for example, if you, like, for example, I am on a fitness journey, I'm on my own fitness journey, and I start looking at some of the things that I can accomplish. Like yesterday, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and Damon and I are doing farmer's carry for a few miles. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what a farmer's carry is, in this scenario, I take a 25-pound plate and I put one in my left hand, one in my right hand, and I walk around the entire track. Okay, I walk around the entire track, and we go for, yesterday was 20 laps. So I take the 25-pound weight on both hands. So that's a
Right.
total of 50 pounds that I'm carrying, and then I walk around one, and then I drop the weight, and then I run. Okay, I drop the weight and I run as fast as I can, get the weight again, and I go back around. Okay, I go back around slowly with, I mean, not slowly, but I walk around with the weight. So weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off, weight on, weight off, and I did that for 3 miles. That, when I first started my fitness journey, if you told me that I was going to, just in the morning right before work, go run 3 miles holding extra weights, and then do that for a few miles, and that just starts the workout, because that just started the workout. We ended up doing a lot of other stuff afterwards. That's just the warm up essentially. So we stretch and then do that, and that's the warm up. If you told me that 4 years ago, I would be like, that's nuts. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
I declared big. The big for me at the time was to do a trifecta, right?
Right.
You did a trifecta. I'm inspired by you doing the trifecta. I'm impressed and I'm inspired. A trifecta is, you want to explain what a trifecta is?
Yeah,
Because you
so
did it.
essentially, part of the Spartan brand, the Spartan races, they're all over the world. And Trifecta is doing the three levels of the races in a span of 12 months. The first race is a little bit over 3 miles. Second race, I believe, is like, is it 6 or 8 miles?
Seven.
7 miles, yeah. And then the third one, the hardest one, is 13 miles. And they have obstacle courses, rope climb, monkey bar. So it's not like just running, it requires all parts of your body, upper body, endurance, stamina, and speed, because you don't want to be out there for hours.
Yeah.
But
So
yes,
you're
it's
you're
about,
going through the mud.
yeah, you're going through the mud, you're carrying heavy stuff, and also it averages out, if you pace them for 12 months, it's about one race every 3 or 4 months, depending which city you decide to race. So every 90 days, you're gonna get a race to go run.
So my big was, so here's the steps. Number one is you declare big. Number two is you get around people who are already at the stage that you are at. And number three is get held accountable. That's the system. So the
Right.
number one thing for me, like I declared big. The big for me was to do a trifecta. So a couple years ago, Lori has done a trifecta. She's done, and I was inspired. And then I'm like, I don't understand this world of like Spartan races and getting obstacle races where I'm in the mud and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I want to do that. I want to run a trifecta, a 3 mile, a 7 mile, and a 13 mile run. And it's not like a marathon or anything. It's that you're carrying stuff. You're carrying buckets. You're going through
Yeah.
the mud. You're going up and down hills. It's not like running on the road. That's simple compared to this stuff. So then I said I wanted to do the trifecta, and I got a coach. A coach that I did has done 50 races, 50 plus races.
Mm-hmm.
So he's well versed in uh, that that type of workout. He understands how to work out because he's done over
Yeah.
50 races. He's done every state, every city that they have had. And so I spent a whole month with him, and I lived with him for a month to kickstart this journey. And the first step was like, hey, let's not even think about racing right now. Let's just get some weight off of you, right? Get
Right.
start to create that level of comfortability.
Yeah.
But today, so that was 2 years ago. I could barely do 1 mile 2 years ago or a year ago, and then now just for breakfast, we're doing 3 4 miles. I've done 4 mile race runs in the morning, 5 mile runs. We've done 6 miles where we're like, hey, let's go run 6 miles, come back, then start work, and that starts the day. So what I'm sharing with you is whatever you're looking to accomplish in life, whether it's more money, whether it's relationship goals, like in
Mm-hmm.
my relationship with Lori, the first thing I started to do before I even met Lori and started dating Lori, I spent time with people who were married. I would go live. I wouldn't live there, but I would go spend some
You just moved
quality.
in with married couples.
I spent quality time with people who were married. So I remember,
Yeah.
like for example, I had a friend. His name was Brandon, and his wife was Brandon was black, and his wife was Mexican. And ironically, right? And they
Wow, what a
moved
coincidence.
right. And then they have a white puppy. They have a white puppy. Ironically, yeah, and they have a white puppy, and we have a white puppy as well. So
We
that's funny.
do. Yeah.
Good times. And then the I went to go spend some time. Like they got married, and I went to go spend some time with them. And I went to their house, and I was like, "What is it like?" And I would have one-on-one conversations with him. I was like, "What is it like to be married, man? Like, how do you? What is that experience like? What are the challenges? What are the realities of it? What is there's a perception on social media of what marriage is like, but tell me what is it like?" And then he would express to me like, this is what it's like. And I would spend time with other married couples at different stages, people who are newlyweds, people who are, completely been married for 30, 40, 50 years. And I would,
Right.
through the interim, I'm like, what should I expect, and what's the reality, so that way I can do it right, or at least do it in a way that creates progression for me. So these are the steps, man. Declare big. So I mean, you can't really. There's not much to declare as far as big in marriage, besides who you marry. All right, it's not like I'm going to be marrying three people. I'm not going to say I want to have 3 wives or 5 wives or 10 wives. But the big for me in marriage could be like the type of person I want to marry, right? The person I
Yeah.
want to attract. And then number two was get around people who are at that stage. So I spent time with married people, and
Mm-hmm.
then get held accountable. So I joined men's groups and church groups who held me accountable before I even met Lori. Before I even met Lori,
Right.
I was already grooming to be a husband. I have stories about me wearing wedding rings, saying I declared that I'm gonna have my wife. I'm gonna get married to the right wife, and
Right.
that happened before I even met Lori.
Yes. And I think, well, with that being said, so you declare big, number one, to the level that you're uncomfortable, right?
Yeah,
Because I do think that if the goal is achievable and it's very like, oh, yes, I'll be fine, I know I can hit that, it's not going to put that pressure cooker type of results. Like some of the best results we've had in our teams and the business and our relationship have been like a lot of sudden change. Now, is it uncomfortable? Yes. Is it stressful? Yes. But at the end, we're always like, whoa, we're so glad we did that. Like some of the things have been, we want to post 5 times a week or 10 times a week. And that was uncomfortable. And we went
yeah,
from zero to doing it, right?
yeah,
We've had fitness goals, like you mentioned, like Spartan races. And I'm like, whoa, we're barely in town. How are we going to add more races, more time, things of that sort? For me, it was important in the last year to be part of a women's group at church. And I'm looking at my calendar and I was like, how? I can barely get enough sleep. I can barely get my own personal time. And more than a year has gone by. And I had someone like ask me like, how did you do it? And I was like, I put it on my calendar, like an appointment. And because I said whether I'm tired, exhausted, grumpy, not feeling it, I still showed up to where now, like, that's my normal. Every Tuesday, I go to women's group. But in the beginning, like the first 6 months, I remember having to take like shots of caffeine. Like, I gotta take
Mm,
a shot just because it goes until 8:30 p.m. or
yeah,
9 p.m. Is it
yeah.
uncomfortable? 100%. Do I feel a little bit more tired on Wednesdays? Yes. But to me, that was a very high priority item in personal growth. So with that being said, is what do you think would happen if someone didn't have one of the three? So for me, the women's group, if I don't go, they're gonna text me like, "How are you doing? Like we didn't see you."
That's right.
For
So
you,
that's
your
number three,
coach,
being held account. That's number three, being
yeah.
held accountable.
What do you think if they just decide to do only one or two, or one and number three? What do you think happens in that scenario? What's most likely to happen?
If you declare big and you are around, it's actually very likely if you're around people, because as a byproduct you're held accountable because it's the culture of that group that you're with.
Right.
I spend time with fit people who are super fit. It's a byproduct that I'm eating salads. Like it's just a byproduct
Mm-hmm.
that I'm eating certain foods, right? And I spend time with people who are making money. It's a byproduct that you end up start making money. I remember a couple of years ago I started hanging around with my mentor, and I went from this was at a time that I was living in this is not a couple years ago, this is a long time ago, but I was living in an apartment with a bunch of guys, and these guys were they were great, they're great friends. However, most of the guys were like just kind of figuring out how to make money. And then so that's who my buddies were, that's who the people I was hanging
Right.
out with, right? And then I started hanging out with a mentor, and everyone in that social circle was driving Rolls Royces, Lamborghinis, and they were making a bunch of money. And then I noticed that when I started to hang out with my mentors, my friends, I was just making five figure. I went from zero revenue, damn near per month, to multiple five figures per month. And I was like, oh, just the connection made a big change. And to the point where it's like, hey, let's level up the car, going from a Honda to a Mercedes Benz, right? And it's like,
Right.
oh, that's a small thing compared to the vision, compared to the your friendships, right? When your friends are that you're around are like players, right? When you can, or when they're driving Mercedes Benz of the year and they're driving upgraded cars and things of that nature. So it's all depending about who you spend time with.
Definitely. And with that being said, also, as you mentioned, it's who you spend your time around with is important because they're either going to help you push you to the next level or you're just going to stay stagnant, which means no growth. Um, do you think there's an connection with how personal goals and business goals? Is there a connection with both? Like, if you're also doing personal goals, will that translate to business? And vice versa. If you do business goals, does it also change how you approach your personal life?
Yeah, I think it's all relative. The way you do one thing is how you do everything. So you do something in your business life, it's going to reflect in your other life, in your other areas of your life. So as we wrap up on this podcast, it's really going to be about declaring big in all areas. Declare big with your money. Declare big with your health. Declare big with your relationships. Declare
Mm-hmm.
big. I talked to Lori. For us, our big right now is buying a private jet, like having a private jet with our name to be able to travel from one place to the other place, and that's our big. And then now, so I want to get around. I get to be around people who are there, who are doing it. So I was, for example, once I started to declare that, I said I need to get people who've like ran businesses at nine figures or who have exited businesses, because if you know about my
Yeah.
goal with our software, we're building $100 million software company. I don't think it was an accident that a couple of weeks ago I was spending time with a gentleman who exited his business for 176 million bucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're chopping it up and talking. So I don't think it goes to show that when you declare and you get around the right type of people, success is a byproduct.
I agree. Well, I hope that this was helpful for anybody that's looking to just revamp or establish their goals, both personal and business. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Make sure to subscribe. That way you can get an alert every time we go live. Have a great rest of your
Yes.
day, everybody.